Welcome to Hope is Here, bringing hope to those struggling with life's difficult situations.
Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is GregJHorn, and I want to ask you today, is Jesus enough? Is Jesus enough? I think we all, for honest at times, kind of doubt that. And yet, if you're like me, there's been a few times in your life where you realize that when Jesus is all you've got, Jesus is all you need. We're going to wrap up this powerful series that we've done the past 6 weeks on fan or follower. Fan or follower. We've been kind of just saying, as a matter of fact, since we started this back in late April, that Jesus isn't looking for enthusiastic admirers. He's looking for completed followers. The first Monday we started looking at this, we looked at the DTR, defining the relationship, defining our relationship with Jesus. Because, the fact is, many people decide to follow Jesus, but they never truly commit to him. And so really they're kind of just still a fan. We've been asking during this series over the past 6 weeks to just take a deep look within and ask the question, am I all in? Am I all in? Then the second week we looked at the open invitation. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus shared the story of the great banquet. And we looked at that story as Jesus shared it, like what excuses do we make today to not be a follower of Jesus? And then we said, the fact of the matter is Jesus shared that powerful story in Luke 14 that God invites anyone and everyone to be a follower of his, to be a follower of Jesus, to be in relationship with God. That's why Jesus came. And the fact of the matter is, though, we all have to make a decision about that open invitation from God and whether we want to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So either he was the Son of God or he was a lunatic, okay? The good news is we all get a choice to make about that open invitation, yet the fact of the matter is there's an urgency and a finality with this open invitation. So just was wanting to, have us all take a deep look within, say, hey, am I all in? And make sure that you know where you're going when you take your last breath. But it's so much more than that, and that's why the third week we looked at choosing intimacy. And that, being a follower is much more than just being a Christian and a religion, okay? It's about a relationship. That's why Jesus came, so you can have a personal relationship. We talked about, there's a difference in knowing God and knowing about him and knowing him intimately through Jesus. Psalm 139, David he's described as a man after God's own heart. And if you haven't read Psalm 139 for a while, or maybe you've never read it, I really, really encourage you to take a couple minutes and read that and just say the simple prayer before you read it. Just say, God, I want to know you like David did. And man, it's a beautiful thing. We also looked at barriers to intimacy. And we said, intimacy with Jesus, it's not just a one-time decision, but it's a daily choice to walk with Jesus, to listen to Jesus, and to prioritize Jesus. Oh, friends, we said, hey, if you want to know what your priorities are, two simple ways. Look at your checkbook and your calendar. Where you spend your money, where you spend your time. And the fourth week, we looked at the comfortable cross. How, unfortunately, man, a lot of times, at Easter, we're focused on just the unbelievable sacrifice, the greatest act of love this world's ever known, when God's one and only Son, Jesus, willingly laid his life down for you and for me. But as time goes on, we kind of forget about that. Then Christmas comes around, and we're all about the precious baby Jesus and Emmanuel, God is with us, and that is wonderful. But I think we really forget, and the cross just becomes a little too comfortable, and we forget the significance. And we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 9, verse 23 here in a second, which is the foundational verse for the series we've done over the past 6 Mondays and Tuesdays. And then last week we looked at more than rules. We took a look at the 10 Commandments and the importance of following God's truth, but making sure that we follow the truth and we share the truth in love, as it talks about in the Bible. And Billy Graham said, when our faith becomes nothing more than a series of rules or regulations, joy flees and our love for Christ grows old. So, man, I want to encourage you, if you missed any of these programs, go to our website, hopeisheretoday.org, hopeisheretoday.org, and you can find that and over 1,000 programs that we've been blessed to do over the past 7 years. We also have a YouTube channel. It's simply Hope is Here, and my name, GregJHorn, and most of our programs are on there. We had a few technical difficulties back in late May, and so there are some programs that aren't on there, but a majority of them are. But the foundation, 2 Bible verses we've been just focusing on as the foundation for this series. It's Luke chapter 9, verse 23. It says, "Then Jesus said to them all, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. Take up your cross daily and follow me." And then John chapter 3, verse 30, a simple, short verse, but a powerful verse. Jesus must increase and I must decrease. And I want to encourage you maybe to write those down and just, ask God to help you die to self on a daily basis. When we started this series, we talked about a scene in John chapter 6. Crowds were traveling with Jesus. By now, he's at the height of his popularity. One day, he's teaching over 5,000 people, it tells us in John 6. Which unfortunately then they just counted the men, but with women and children, there were probably in excess of 15,000 people. And as it got there to, almost dinner time, people were hungry, and Jesus asked the disciples, what we could do for food. And they're like, man, are you kidding me? How are we going to feed all these people? And then all of a sudden, Andrew, who was scanning the crowd, told Jesus about a boy that in the crowd who had 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. And so Jesus told him to bring the little boy to him. Jesus blessed those 5 loaves of bread, small loaves of bread, and 2 small fish. And, of course, it's just an amazing story there in John 6 as Jesus fed all 15,000. And, we always know that Jesus always shows up in our life in situations, but sometimes he shows out. And, man, he showed out this day as after people had plenty of time to eat, he told the disciples to, hey, take up the leftovers. And it winds up they took 12 baskets full of leftovers. And, this is just my humble opinion. It felt like, as I've read that story numerous times, but as I read that recently, earlier this year, I just felt like God said, there's 12 baskets because there was 12 disciples. And he wanted each one of those guys to never forget this moment. And, each one of them had a basket of the leftovers of what Jesus used with 5 small loaves of bread and 2 small fish and fed 5,000 people. Not only did he provide enough for that meal, he had provided the leftovers. And I want to remind you today, friends, that God is more than enough for you. He is more than enough for you. But after that dinner, the crowd decides to camp out for the night so they can be with Jesus the next day. Because, hey, they're committed fans. But the next morning, the crowd wakes up and they're hungry again, and they're ready for a little breakfast. They look around for Jesus, who's actually their meal ticket, but he's nowhere to be found. Eventually, they figure out that Jesus and his disciples had crossed over to the other side of the lake. And instead of going home, they make the trip to the other side of the lake to be with Jesus. The crowd seems to, this time, have no higher priority than to be with Jesus. So you know what? Maybe these people are more than fans after all. But by the time they catch up to Jesus, man, they're starving. They're hungry. They missed the chance to order breakfast, and they're ready to find out what's on the lunch menu. But Jesus decided to shut down the all-you-can-eat buffet. He's not handing out any more free samples. In John chapter 6, verses 26 and 27, it says, "I tell you the truth, you're looking for me, not because you saw miraculous signs, but because you ate the loaves and you had your fill." Jesus there, it seems to me like he's speaking a little truth and love from Jesus, like we talked about last week. So many times we speak the the truth, but not in love. And yet Jesus spoke it, but he spoke it in love to them. And, Jesus was actually having the old DTR, defining the relationship with the crowd. And he knows deep down inside these people are not going out to the trouble and sacrifice because they're following him, but they're following the food. I mean, how would they respond when Jesus closes the drive-through window? In verse 35 in John chapter 6, Jesus offers himself, but the question is, would that be enough for these people? Jesus declared in John 6, verse 35, I am the bread and the life. He who comes to me will never go hungry, and he who believes in me will never be thirsty. I love Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, verses 30. Because here's what I know, friends, all of our souls are hungry and thirsty. And maybe that's where you're at today. I want to ask you, is your soul, is your heart, your mind, are you hungry? Are you thirsty today? Just say, man, I just need some hope. I need some peace. Man, I just need God's love. I need to be loved. I love how Jesus describes what he can fulfill in our lives in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. I really like the Message version of this 3 verses in Matthew 11. Verse 28, it says, Jesus said, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, Jesus said. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real test. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Friends, man, that's just so powerful. Jesus just says, hey, I want to help you learn how to live an unforced rhythm of grace. And just doing life with Jesus, friends, it's so much better. It's so much more than those rules we talked about last week. But, in our time remaining, I want to look at 4 facts that followers of Jesus can know and that Jesus is enough. And the first one is when Jesus is the only thing on the menu, you find out if he's the only one you are really actually hungry for. I'll say that again. When Jesus is the only thing on the menu, you find out if Jesus is the only one that you are really hungry for. I mean, let's be honest, when you find out there are no other options, that's when you find out that Jesus is actually enough. I remember there was a song by Passion, Chris Tomlin, I think might have had the lead on it, but it was called More Than Enough, and that Jesus, all of you, is more than enough for all of me. And, I love that as I've just seen people all throughout my life who have found out when that happens. I've shared my own story of the flood, bankruptcy, and divorce in 2001 and how it brought me to my knees, but how I found out that Jesus was more than enough. I'll protect this guy's name, but we'll just call him Steve. I had a guy recently that, was just doing life, married. He had 2 wonderful kids at home. He had a good job. And then one day he came home and his wife said, after almost 20 years of marriage, I don't love you anymore and I want a divorce. And he said, well, what's going on? She said, well, I'm leaving for somebody else. And he's like, well, who is it? And it actually was with another woman that his wife is leaving for. She not only left him, but she also left the 2 children behind also. And, friends, it broke his heart. But you know what? He winded up surrendering his life. He said, I've just been a fan. I want to be a follower. And he was baptized on Easter Sunday this year. I had the honor of doing that. So unfortunately, we're out of time, but we hope you'll join us again tomorrow as we'll continue looking at, is Jesus enough on Hope is Here.
Thank you for listening to Hope is Here podcast. To listen to one of our previous programs or to make a tax-deductible donation, please go to our website, hopeishere.today. That's hopeishere.today.
Do you want to grow as a leader this summer? I want to encourage you to attend the Perceived Ministries Leadership Summit on Saturday, July 19th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Lyric Theater in downtown Lexington. The cost for a ticket is only $35, or a table of 8 gets a discounted rate of only $250. That includes your lunch. I hope that you will register today at perceivedministries.com. That's perceivedministries.com.